incoming results of our poll. I will also, maybe it's difficult for people to actually already access the menti.com. We thought we would start with getting an idea of who is in the room. So we have one. But let's go to the session agenda, because we have quite a full agenda, we have a slide to make that insightful for you. Setting the table is my own dish, a synthesis study that I co-authored together with other authors. I will just talk you through that. On food systems and the influence of narratives, perspectives, and transition pathways. We will then turn to three very interesting speakers that will share their experiences from the field. Then it's your turn to go into breakouts and discuss a few questions that we prepared. And as a dessert, Caro Krijger from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will share her reflections on what does this discussion actually mean for the upcoming 2021 UN Food System Summit and other important processes. So from my side, in 5 minutes or less, I'd like to run you through the synthesis study that we've prepared, commissioned by NWO-WOTRO on food systems. The title of the study is "The Implications of Implicit Choices: How Food Systems Sustainability is Impacted by Narratives, Entry Points, and Transition Pathways." So as many of the other synthesis studies that you might have come across, we were asked to look at different projects, research projects that were funded by the Food and Business Research Program. And in this case, me and my co-authors, Daniel Gaitan Cremashi, Daniel Winter, and Ellen Lammers, we looked at 8 research projects that were part of the third call for proposals that looked for transdisciplinary research projects about sustainability transitions in food systems. So it had the food systems and sustainability transitions in the call. So apart from looking at these projects, we dove into the literature on food systems, transition, and power. And tried to formulate lenses actually to look at these projects. These projects were very diverse. There was research taking place in Benin, Ethiopia, Nepal, with very different partners, such as major cocoa companies, informal fish smokers, or networks of organic vegetable producers. So the title of the project and the main findings really of next slide, Leonard. Yeah, of the study was that even though all the projects took a food systems approach, because it was of course in the call for proposals, they did this in very different ways. And when we looked at the narratives that were implicitly inspiring or guiding these projects, we saw that had quite an influence on the approaches and decisions that were taken in these research projects. So we found out that there were 2 narratives that were mostly used, one on food systems for improved health and the other one on food systems for improved natural resource use. And that, for example, the narrative on food systems for improved health sort of guided the researchers to focus more on certain food systems outcomes related to food and nutrition security, so access or availability of food. While Horteco, one of the projects in Uruguay and Chile, focused, for example, on understanding obstacles to adoption of organic practices. So these implicit choices of narratives, but also in the sort of change that the projects aspire to contribute to, we saw influenced entry points and stakeholder engagement. So it's an emerging finding that I think Frank will also question in his talk, that if a project has quite a transformative approach to the change it wants to contribute to, we saw that it is more inclined to engage with stakeholders that we could call alternative or niche actors, while other projects that were more about improving or reforming the existing food systems were more inclined to engage with dominant stakeholders, often government or leading cocoa companies. I have to set the example, so I had 5 minutes to share my story. We can flick through the slides quickly because mostly the next slide is of the key messages very much in tune with the keynote of Melissa Leach and Sietse. Challenging your own assumptions to discover your blind spots, have a good sense of who the stakeholders are, but also what their interests are and how they are expecting to be influenced by the project or intervention that is planned. And for funders, the importance of building in diversity in these perspective narratives, approaches, and transition pathways. So that leaves me to give the floor to our next speaker, Frank, to share his experience of HIVOS and the Sustainable Diets for All program. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Paulina, and welcome everybody. Can you hear me clear? It's always a challenge with Zoom, and I've been in so many Zooms call before, but it also has advantages because it's easy to get a lot of people on the world together without flying and getting so much carbon in the air. So my name is Frank Mackelson. I'm program manager of Sustainable Diets for All program, and this program is ending this year. It was a 5-year partnership with funding from the Dutch government together with the International Institute of Environment and Development, IIED, from the UK. And I only have 5 minutes, so it's always a challenge for me. So I hope I don't speak too fast to get as much as possible in 5 minutes. But I have to say I really like the synthesis study because what they say about the chosen narratives, entry points for interventions and transition pathways, they really provide a very good, effective space for really getting the food system transformation further. So it was for me also a bit of an eye-opener to look at the different narratives, and because sometimes you use them implicitly in your thinking, and others may have completely other thinking or ideas. But in my opinion, it lacks a little bit emphasis on the need for multi-stakeholder initiatives, and this is what we really worked on with Sustainable Diets for All. So I will give a few examples of how we worked in that setting, just building on the study. So we gained a lot of experience in this way of working, both using food councils, food parliaments, sometimes set up by partners themselves, but also we actively supported the setting up of food change labs in Uganda, Zambia, Bolivia, Indonesia, the country we worked in. And that was a very, very effective way of getting a lot of people together. So small-scale farmers, food vendors, government authorities, small companies, research institutes, really get them in one room and look at the system, and also start with the food system map. And where you already referred to, we have an ambition of being transformative. I'm not sure if we all always get there, and if the government we worked with, for example, have the same opinion. But so we worked with regime players, but also including marginalized people like small-scale farmers, informal market actors, and trying also to get some niche players around. So people who are really doing an innovation or setting things up. Like, for example, we work with youth in our food lab in Zambia, who really had some very creative ideas in changing the system. And also working with media, who also used kind of very inventive campaigns to get some results. So I find it a bit too strict to make this difference between the regime players, the ones in power, and the transformative actors, the one who have kind of transformative power, because they are able to set things in motions. But I think you really have to be much stronger in getting the marginalized people. Those are the ones, the farmers, the informal market actors, the food vendors. They provide most of the food to the global south, and they're always marginalized, and they're not taken into account in any food system transformation. And in our program, two things were very key. One was the concept of citizen agency. So we worked really trying to also learn from the citizens. And if you work with partners, we work with about 18 partners in those 4 or 5 countries. It doesn't mean that their partners automatically also put the citizens in front. Sometimes they also have assumptions, perspectives, like all of us. 2 minutes, good you say that. So let's go back to our clear examples, because you asked.
Actually, left, Frank. You have to round up, actually.
So I have to round up. So sorry, but one example I really want to give, because it was inspiring, is in Uganda. We worked with food vendors and the local government. And initially, the local government, they didn't see any value of food vendors. They want to chase them away. But what we really managed is that the food vendors in our lab process, bringing all those people together, they start to understand each other, getting out of their silos. And the food vendors, they started forming their organization. The municipal counties started to change their policies and also create better infrastructure to support the food vendors. So there really were some very practical improvements there, which really helped to improve the situation for the people who most needed the food in this case, Fort Portal in Uganda.
Great.
And that's really my plea. What I was missing in the analysis, and also that's my last sentence, Paulina, is the more focus on the informal food system, in the narratives, in the transition pathways. They are often excluded because they're not so important anymore in the north. Everything has been formalized, and we often forget that kind of lens. So that was my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And I think it really echoes also Sietse Vellema's plea for enlarging decision space that he mentioned as an important role of research. You also mentioned the inclusion of marginalized players that are and have a transformative power. Maybe that's an excellent bridge to our next speaker, Vivek. Live from India. When we were preparing, he was still in a car moving, but now all quiet and in the office. So I give the floor to you, Vivek. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulina. Very happy to be part of this discussion. I am a part of the Fish for Food program. I represent an NGO called Fishmark, which is a fisheries management and resource center, an NGO working with basically fishing communities across India. So as you know, in India, we have the caste system, and some of these traditional occupations are inherited occupations. So still continue to be followed by people belonging to that same particular lineage. So this is a very large community across the country, across the entire coast. So we therefore are very much close to one group of stakeholders who are part of the fish food system, if you look at the fish chain. So the interesting part is that you have the fishermen who go to sea, and therefore they are at the, let's say, start of the value chain. They catch the fish, produce the fish, however you call it, or harvest the fish. And then they are also at the end of the chain, just before the consumer, because quite a lot of the women in the community sell the fish to consumers. So they are at both ends of the chain, and they are quite often marginal politically and socially in the country. It's a large group of people who live literally physically on the margins of the nation, and who are also socially and otherwise marginalized. So this is a community with which I and many of my colleagues have been working for many years. So we were certainly not disinterested researchers joining a project led by good friend Martin Baving, who is also listening in, but actually very, let us say, subjective and extremely passionate champions of this community who are part of this. And this project was essentially all about how the poor urban consumer can get fish, or how can he be helped, or he or she be helped to get fish, which is an important part of diet and important for the nutritional security of the poor. So that was the larger project. But since we were also projects, and all the other friends in the research were also old friends, and you knew the issues surrounding all this, they also were very keen that we should join this from the point of the fishing community. So in this project, we therefore took up the role of looking at the problems faced by the women fish vendors, who play a very major role in the coastal towns and cities of India, and even the nearby rural areas, of selling fresh fish today. Historically, they had a huge role in managing when the fish lands, right from sorting onwards till it's sold to the consumer. It was largely a women's affair. A substantial part of their work was in traditional processing. But in the last 40-50 years, because of normal development, good infrastructure, roads, ice, fish flows much faster. The processing requirements, there was a time when the average quantum of the average proportion of fish processed was about 60 to 70%. Today, it's down to 10%. So they have lost livelihoods. But in turn, they have become extremely important in terms of selling the fresh fish. So this has been a major part of our, we are trying to work in addressing their problems. So they are extremely vulnerable. They go out and sell fish. The markets are unfriendly. They don't have any social protection. And now they are being increasingly marginalized in that trade itself by newcomers, male comers with better transport facilities, now internet sellers, and various kinds of new. So this is the whole power thing that we decided that we will tackle in this, and the way of trying to empower these women to protect their position in the chain. We have been looking at technology, we have been looking at credit and financial services, and we have also organized. So, so that is how we are trying to address it in this program.
Very good. I think that was just in time, but very interesting perspective on the focus on such a normally more invisible group, and the role that research can play in highlighting their needs. Leads me to give the floor to Francois from the Dutch Embassy in Kigali, perhaps to share from a more institutional point of view your experiences.
Thanks, Paulina. I'm called Francois Umukiza. I'm a policy officer at the Netherlands Embassy in Rwanda. Since 2012, I work on food and nutrition security projects and some of the economic affairs related projects. I'm delighted to be here to share our experiences on the journey towards designing interventions for the sustainability of food systems here in Rwanda. My experience will be a little bit from what the previous speakers has shared, because Embassy is not an implementer, but we also design programs within the bilateral cooperation framework between the two countries. I want to share with you along the 4 lines our experiences. One is about from the design of the intervention, Second, I will talk about how we set our entry point for our interventions. And then third, I will also look at how we come up with the transition pathways. Fourth, I will touch a little bit about some of the successful experiences that we have seen on the ground. So the design of the FNS, or Food and Nutrition System intervention, started back 2015, and there we were working on a program of 5 years. Yeah, the first lesson we learned is that it's very important to understand the context from a political dimension to economic dimension, understanding the different stakeholders, power construction, because it's different from country to a country, understand the power dynamics, and also really establish or identify the supporters and the spoilers within the system. So those ones can be institutions, can be corporations, can be individuals, but you really have to come up with a holistic analysis of their behaviors. When you reach there, it's also important to really understand what kind of systemic changes you want to happen for the system to be sustainable. And this has to link with the result framework that you have. Of course, it needs a little bit of patience, because really bringing systemic changes within a food system, it requires a lot of time. It requires engagement from everyone. So there should be a shared agenda, at least from your institution. And this is something that takes time. And it has to link with the being able to safeguard the institutional memory. Sometimes people come and go, and then if you are not able to keep the same agenda, then you are lost in the middle of the way. Entry point, yeah, it's very important. Also linking up with the Netherlands policies or your own policies, added value within the system. You have to look at where you can make meaningful impact. So, and you have to understand that sometimes within a system, you can change things, but then have also unintended outcomes that may be negative or positive. So you need to be mindful of this one as well. Yeah. Then on number 3, about the transition pathways, it's important to agree on a sequential process, like what are the results that you are going to achieve on a gradual basis, such that you should be able to tell when the system is ready to move to another level, because there are so many different levels that you will not achieve in one time. On number 4, I want to share with you some of the best practices that we have of successful projects. I may mention one nutrition project we had with UNICEF. For us to have it really institutionalized, it took us like 2 phases. I mean, that is 10 years. So phase 1 was about working with NGOs and UNICEF. Then phase 2 was more working with UNICEF and the government. So you can see that we had to have this sequential process whereby we start with those that are ready and then wait until the government is ready, so that we can have the process or the approach to be institutionalized. So I see my 5 minutes already gone. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Make a closing remark and then.
Yes. So the point I'm trying to make here is that for having systemic changes within the food system, it's important to have a long-term agenda and be able to keep consistency within your team to pursue that agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much also for the very clear examples of the need to have a long-term vision, engage everyone, and try to achieve the shared agenda, to not get lost on the way. I think we have a very interesting experience here in the room, in the Zoom room. So I'm gonna ask Leonard to divide us all up into groups, but leave it to the different moderators to. Well, no, actually, I will ask Nina to quickly explain the questions that we are sending our participants off with.
Yeah, okay, I will be very brief. So you'll be split up into, I think, 3 or 4 groups. 4. I see 4 groups to chat a bit about the presentations that you've just been hearing, and also to discuss in more detail your own experiences with the role of power and politics in your work on food systems. It can be positive or negative, where they are taken into account or where they were ignored. And secondly, what would be helpful for you to include a power or politics lens in your work, in future work? What would be helpful? So what would be needed? What should we take on next year and later on? So those are the major points that we would like to discuss with you. And after the breakout sessions, we will come back in plenary and share 1 or 2 key findings per subgroup.
Yeah, we will try to use the menti.com again for those key takeaways. So if you haven't had the chance to log in yet, we'll make sure that Leonard puts it up on the screen again once we get back from the breakouts. We've also given the space to our speakers who will be facilitating your discussions to come up with their own statement or questions. So don't be surprised if you are joining Frank or Vivek and also get another extra bonus question. So have fun and see you all back in 30, 40 minutes.